This week on the 77% Street Debate.
You want Swaziland to be a republic?
Yes, which will benefit the nation, not only benefiting one family.
There can be Eswatini without the king. There can never be a country without the people.
When leadership fails, the buck stops with one man.
The king cannot wake up and make a decision all by himself.
The 77% is in Eswatini. This is Africa's last absolute monarchy. Now, we are on a continent of big man politics, and here in Eswatini, the king literally reigns supreme. So on today's street debate, we're asking the question, can an absolute monarchy survive in the 21st century? One of the things that we saw here just a few months ago was that there was serious unrest never before seen. It caught the attention of the entire world. We're going to start with Tibu because you're going to tell us what happened.
So what we saw was definitely high levels of brutality in the country, which began when the government decided to take out an order to stop the delivery of petitions in our various constituencies. So we as young people decided that we are going to defy the order and continue to deliver petition and take our grievances to the streets. What we then experienced was that in true police sense, the government unleashed its army on unarmed civilians and citizens in the country, where over 70 young people were killed, over 600 people were incarcerated, and over 200 were injured. Some were amputated. Some of them are still walking with bullets lodged in their bodies. So it was definitely a case of brutality that I think we've never experienced before in the country.
Mthunzi, why are young people so angry here? Because it's that anger that essentially fueled the protests. What is the anger about? And I know you're one of those very angry young people here.
The young people in the country are angry because there is a government that is in place that doesn't take care of their needs. We have got a high rate of unemployment in the country. We have got students who do qualify to get scholarships, but they are not given scholarship by the current regime. So our people are angry. And another thing may be, even before because I think I may even need to narrate on the Tabane revolution, because this thing, it all started when Tabane Komonye was killed by the state police. So as one of our own, the people and the youth decided to take the state to account, more especially in regard to this law student, who is one of our own, I think.
Becky, I introduced the idea that these protests were almost never seen before. The world had never seen such image coming out of Eswatini. What made these protests different?
Well, it was caused by a frustrated youth, a frustrated people. You know, we are a single tribe nation. This shouldn't really happen. But over the years, one of the things that has emerged is that the king has lost touch with us as a people. He behaves as if we are a side issue in his life. He has got more important things to do, like making money. And yet his job first and foremost is to govern this country properly. And what it has translated to is people who are getting disgruntled, getting frustrated. Youth has got no prospects in life, while he sort of lives large. And it was always going to happen. And in fact, it will happen again until if it doesn't do anything about what has happened in June.
The king we're talking about is King Mswati III, who actually came onto the throne when he was 18 years old, and for the last 3 decades he has been the ultimate ruler here in Eswatini. I do want to come to you now, Mbongiseni, and just ask you the question about human rights and what it means for human rights living in an absolute monarchy.
Human rights, they don't matter when in an absolute monarch situation. This is manifested in situations where human rights are provided for in the Constitution, like the freedom of association and assembly, Article 25 of the Constitution, which allows for existence of political parties. But one way or the other, there is always a way to suppress dissenting voices while those human rights clauses are afforded in the constitution, but while the king is still absolute, it's hard to exercise all human rights.
Glenn, I'll come to you now, because on the issue of human rights and living in an absolute monarchy, can people have absolute human rights and live in an absolute monarchy?
Maybe first, maybe correct the statement that Swaziland is not an absolute monarchy. The king has got minimum powers. He works in consultation.
With who?
With council and with his cabinet ministers. It is in the constitution and it's very clear.
Understood. But back to my question about
Yes.
the issue of human rights. You're standing next to a young man who was imprisoned
Yes.
because he took part in a protest,
Yes.
demanding answers from the government as to what had happened to the life of another young man in this country. There are people who have been arrested who are afraid to speak out against the king because there are consequences for that. People who wouldn't even take part in the debate today.
Yeah.
So my question then is, human rights and an absolute monarchy, do those things go hand in hand?
It does. It does. We have a
Are people free in Eswatini
people are free
to express
We-
themselves,
we-
to express dissent?
We couldn't be here. We couldn't be here. The constitution is clear. However, sometimes when you have a concern, it may be associated with some elements of criminality, which we believe even those that are in prison
Yes.
will be cleared. It's just a process that happens when there's distractions. These distractions were quite new in the country. And a lot happened. So let's just believe that the judicial will do their work and we'll see justice for those individuals.
Okay. Political parties are banned in Eswatini. Can you tell us why?
Whereas, like I said earlier, we are a single tribe. There was this fear that political parties might divide people,
Right.
and yet we had a country that had just come from independence and was rallying around the king, who had just got his powers from after colonialism, and there was the tribe. But unfortunately, everything has gone wrong since then. The idea of rallying around the king, which I think people, Maswati, did in good faith, is being abused. We have become the loving wife who is being abused by a husband simply because we love him. And at some point there has to be a reaction to that. I think it's in human nature that even the abused wife eventually draws the line. That's why I say everything now depends on what his move will be towards reconciling, because the job of reconciling the country is his.
Yes.
It's not ours.
Right.
It's his job to bring the country together. If he doesn't do it, he will lose.
Mtunzi, Utlina said you guys do not live in an absolute monarchy, that the king has limited powers.
No, I want to agree with that, because the king in 1973, it was King Sopus II, he assumed absolute power when he assumed power over the judiciary, legislature, and the executive. Since then, since 1973, the country is run through traditional structures and through demands from the monarch and from the king. Whatever the king is against, it goes. Whatever the king says, it's the law in the country.
Yeah.
So this country, it's an absolute monarch. The king is above the constitution.
Mbongen, I'll come to you on that point as well. Eswatini, is this an absolute monarchy?
Eswatini is an absolute monarch. In constitutional monarchs, the people govern. Whether individual candidates or political parties, they govern, and the monarch reigns as a symbol of unity for the whole country. We are not at that stage. But also one point I want to emphasize is that I think the king should remember there can be Eswatini without the king. There can never be a country without the people. So I think that needs to be emphasized thoroughly, that he exists because of the people. That's why Peggy is saying the people trusted the institution of the monarch with their lives. But if you abdicate that duty, there can still be a nation without a monarch.
Sakolo, does the system work for you, the system of governance?
No, it doesn't, because we are conquered by Mswati. So he owns the mines, he owns everything, even the people in the country. So it means it's poverty to us, because we don't have the land to bring us food, we don't have the mines to provide us with machinery and equipment. So the system is currently not working for me, and I believe that a democracy that will bring the land and everything to the people is one system that can help for that can work for me and the entire Swazi nation.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify on a few issues. It is not accurate that the king has lost touch with his people. The people, what we have seen, like I've said, is we saw MPs taking over from concerns of students.
Right.
There's an issue of legislation of Section 25. It is not the king's role to make policies in parliament. The only difference that we have in Swaziland, in our unique governance system, is that legislators are appointed by individual people from community level, not a group of people. Individual can have access to this.
Can we take a step back, though?
Yes.
You are raising issue with the statement that was made about the king being out of touch with the people.
Yes.
I almost want to argue, was the king ever in touch with the people? Because this is somebody who's clearly lived a more privileged life than everybody basically on this panel. But we are in a country with one of the highest levels of unemployment.
Yeah.
Almost 60% of young people don't have jobs.
Yeah.
How can it be that this monarchy is working for any of them?
If the MPs that we appoint or elect don't do their job,
Right.
is it the king's fault?
Good question, and I want to pose that to you, Tibu. You elect the people to represent you in parliament. If they're ineffective, why is that the king's fault?
You can't necessarily blame the MPs, because the environment inside parliament is very difficult for them to actually do the work that they were elected to do. We've had members of parliament coming out to say they don't sometimes go against the wishes of the king, because once you say something that is opposing the king and the monarchy, then there's going to be no development in your constituency. The only constituencies that get to develop are those that are loyal to the king.
Mthunzi, would you do a better job in parliament if you were elected?
Maybe before I answer that question, let me maybe start by clearing this out. You know, opportunism doesn't have any shame. Even when your people are suffering, you'll still take that opportunity. Our people are suffering out there. Our members of parliament, maybe people must understand what's the role of a member of parliament. Because when we elect those people, even though they come on individual merits, but they have to work for the nation, not solely for their own constituents. Because whatever law that they are to make in parliament, it has an impact on the lives of the entire nation. So you cannot tell me then that whenever an honorable member of parliament addresses our masses and our people, whenever they've got a gathering or whatever, then you say they are hijacking that thing. I just wanted to clear out that thing. These members of parliament understood and understand our situation as the people, because we elected them as the people of Swaziland. Then, coming to your question that there is nothing I can do if I were to be a member of parliament in the current status quo. Why? Because in parliament, we've got members of parliament that are appointed by the king. 10 of them, if I'm in the House of Assembly. In the Senate, we've got 20, of which now, by that virtue, the king already has got more influence than we have.
Mbongiseni, you wanted to weigh in on the issue of parliament.
Are you aware that a parliament resolution can be decreed by the king? The whole parliament resolution. If he doesn't want it, it doesn't go.
So that answers your question, because you said, is it the king's fault? And it clearly is, because he's clearly in charge of parliament.
We are purposely ignoring the constitution, that the king works with council, with Emabandla. He works with an advice of some council. This is what we need to understand clearly, that the king cannot wake up and make a decision all by himself. The issues that we're raising are assumptions. The constitution we have is clear.
So is it an assumption that MPs who don't do the king's bidding face repercussions? Are there tangible examples of that?
The way I see it, from what I've observed, what has happened in this country over maybe the last decade, the leadership that was young, the youth of independence, who were involved in political activism when there were political parties, they grew up to govern this country and therefore had a political philosophy in their approach. Unfortunately, they've died. A new group has come up of youth, and I'm talking about the people in parliament. They have no leadership, political, philosophical background. You know, they are just there because they were elected. What then has happened is there's been a huge collapse in leadership in this country. And there's only one person who can fix that. It's the king.
And how does
He is the boss. Whether you call him an absolute monarch, which I think he is, or you call him a nice guy, he is the boss in this country. And because there's no leadership, whose fault is it that a bill is not going to parliament? It's a failure of leadership. And when leadership fails, the buck stops with one man. Because of the lavish lifestyle that the king lives and where his children basically give us the middle finger for what they have and have never worked for, chiefs have become horribly corrupt because they're like, hey, we too want in. And the people are suffering. So whatever we say, whether we talk about MPs, and I think this country has no leadership at all. I don't care which way. But one person fixes that, and he's not doing his job.
I'm just going to put it simply here, and this is really oversimplifying it, but Eswatini has a very unique system of governments, and they don't have political parties, but people here do elect individuals that then go on to represent them in parliament. Tibu, does this system work for you?
The Tingonja system doesn't work for me because I think it is not a system that is used to uplift and improve the living standards of the people, but it is only there to sustain the status quo, and that being of the king and the royal, the monarchical institution. It does nothing for the ordinary souls of the people, but it only, let me say, just uplifts and to just maintain the status quo of the lavish lifestyle of the king and the monarchical institution.
The buck stops with the king. Can you at least accept that?
Let's make a point clear here on the issue of the boss. Let's take an example of our neighbors, South Africa. If a provisional leader fails, is it the president that needs to move out? Is it the whole party that must go down? The answer is no.
But this is the entire country. This is not an individual province. This is the entire country.
Yes, I'm getting to that.
Unemployment is across the board in the country, not in a specific
Unemployment
region.
is a problem of the whole world.
But 60% of young people not having jobs.
I've made an example that we have RDF funds, 885 million that government provides. This is cash money that provides for all the MPs to utilize in each Ingundla. That money is not used by the MPs. And again, we must blame the leader. I think what is accurate here is that we lack an instrument of recalling an underperforming MP because the distractions is not a solution. We need to have a way to talk to our legislators. Beggy mentioned a fundamental issue here, that there is a lack of information in our legislators. What are we doing? We need to ask ourselves, what are we doing as organizations, individual organizations, to ensure that ABC happens in Parliament? We need to avoid the issues of boycotting the call. When the king calls the nation, some boycott. They say it doesn't work.
Bongseni, you wanted to respond to that.
The political awareness is very high now among people in the country. But also, I would like to caution government and the monarch. We, as old people, we've been calling for a constitutional monarch. Unfortunately, the angry young people, they are changing their rhetoric. They are even calling for a republic. It's dangerous. That's why I'm taking Beggy's point that if the king wants to prevent that, he should need to act now, bring a genuine dialogue.
Satkolo, perhaps respond to that, because for you, is this about a monarchy versus no monarchy? Is this about having a king or not having a king?
Yeah, it's about that. Actually, we no longer see the need of the monarchy within the government.
You want Swaziland to be a republic?
Yes, we want a new Swaziland which will be a republic, which will benefit the nation, not only benefiting one family, which is parasitic to the funds of the nation.
Yeah, is that a bad place? Is Eswatini being a republic a bad place to be? Are young people asking something that's unreasonable?
It's a space that none of us know.
But you have the world as an example.
Hang on, it's a space none of us know. But the youth who are like him saying, you know, the monarchy must go away, is not because the idea of a monarchy he can't stand. It's because in his lifetime a monarchy hasn't worked for him. Whose duty is to make a monarchy work? It is the monarchy itself. It must add value to his life for him to find value in it.
So your problem is the king, not the monarchy
Well,
system.
for me, you know, I'm forever the optimist. I believe that this thing can be fixed because all it
The
takes...
king has to go.
No, I'm not saying he can fix it if he wants to. If he doesn't, they will drive him out.
Mtunzi, the question we're asking on the 77% today on this street debate is, can an absolute monarchy survive in the 21st century? Do you want to continue living in a monarchy?
I don't believe in a monarchy because monarchs all over here are parasitic. They don't work. We, the working class, suffer the most. Our fathers and our mothers, they suffer at the expense of these monarchs. They live those luxurious lives through our hard-earned monies, and only to find that these princes and princesses, they will come and show us a meekly finger.
And that is the view from Eswatini, where we've been asking the question on today's street debate, can an absolute monarchy survive in the 21st century? As always, we're looking forward to engaging on this topic. What do you think about what you've heard in this street debate today? Perhaps what are your recommendations? What do you make of the kind of future that young people here in Eswatini are looking for their country? From myself and the team, it's been great having your company. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.